They gathered to watch her fall. Under a crimson moon, thousands of wolves packed the stone arena, hungry for the spectacle of Lyra Ashen's humiliation, the low-born outcast, the unwanted mate. Tonight, noble heir Darian Voss would reject her publicly, and the crowd would feast on her shame like carrion. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that standing in the shadows, the most dangerous wolf in the realm was watching. And he had other plans. This is the story of how the girl they mocked became the force that reshaped their world. Stay until the end to see how she burns everything down and rises from the ashes. Drop a comment with your city, and let's take this journey together. The arena stank of old blood and newer anticipation. Lyra stood in the center of the circular pit, dirt under her bare feet, torchlight casting jagged shadows across her face. Above her, stone tiers rose in concentric rings, packed shoulder to shoulder with wolves who'd come from every corner of the Voss territory. 5,000, maybe more, all watching, all waiting. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She pressed them against her thighs, rough canvas pants, borrowed and too big, and forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way her mother had taught her before the fever took her, before Lyra became truly alone. "Look at her," someone whispered from the third tier. A woman's voice, sharp with amusement. "She actually thinks he'll go through with it." Laughter rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. Lyra didn't look up. She'd learned early that eye contact only made it worse. In a world where strength was currency and bloodline was law, being low-born meant you were already half invisible. Being weak, or what they considered weak, meant you might as well not exist at all. Except tonight, she existed very much. Tonight, she was the entertainment. The claiming moon came once every 3 years, when the lunar cycle aligned with the territory's oldest magic. Wolves who'd reached maturity since the last moon gathered to formalize their bonds, mates stepping forward to claim each other before the pack, before the ancestors, before the moon herself. It was supposed to be sacred, beautiful even. For Lyra, it was something else entirely. "Where is he?" a man shouted from somewhere high up. "Where's the Voss heir?" "Probably reconsidering," another voice called back, and the laughter swelled again, meaner now. Lyra's chest tightened. She knew what they were thinking, what they'd been thinking since the bond first snapped into place 6 months ago, an invisible thread connecting her soul to Darian Voss's, whether either of them wanted it or not. The bond didn't care about bloodlines or social standing. It didn't care that Darian was the eldest son of House Voss, groomed since birth to lead, while Lyra scraped by doing laundry for families who wouldn't meet her eyes. The bond just was, and everyone hated it. "He won't claim her," the sharp-voiced woman said again, louder this time, like she wanted Lyra to hear. "His father won't allow it. Can you imagine? A Voss bound to that?" "She doesn't even have a family name," someone else added. "Just Ashen, like she crawled out of a fire pit." More laughter. Always more laughter. Lyra focused on a spot in the dirt near her left foot, a small rock, smooth and gray. She counted the seconds. 43, 44, 45. Then the drums started. The sound rolled across the arena like thunder, deep and resonant, vibrating in her bones. The crowd shifted, voices dropping to murmurs as they turned toward the eastern entrance. The claiming procession. Finally. Lyra's heart kicked against her ribs. "He'll come," she told herself. "He has to come." The bond wouldn't lie. For 6 months, she'd felt Darian on the other end of that invisible thread. Distant, yes, and often cold. But there. Present. Real. He'd never spoken to her directly, never acknowledged her in public, but twice she'd caught him watching from across the market square, his expression unreadable. Once, after a particularly vicious rumor had circulated about her mother's death, she'd felt a pulse of something through the bond. Not quite sympathy, not quite anger, but something. She'd held on to that something for months. The drums grew louder. Through the eastern archway they came. First the drummers themselves, 12 of them, bare-chested and painted with ceremonial marks. Then the elders, moving in pairs, their gray hair braided with silver thread. Then the unmated wolves, young men and women dressed in traditional claiming whites, walking with the easy confidence of people who knew exactly where they belonged. And at the back, flanked by his father and younger brother, came Darian Voss. The crowd roared. It wasn't quite cheering, not quite worship. Something between the two. Appreciation, maybe. Recognition. Darian was everything they valued. Tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that seemed carved rather than born. Dark hair swept back from a high forehead, strong jaw, eyes the color of winter storms. He wore simple black, refusing the ceremonial whites, which somehow made him look even more commanding. He didn't look at Lyra, not once, as he descended the stone steps into the arena. Not once, as he took his place opposite her, 20 feet of dirt and expectation between them. His gaze swept the crowd, acknowledging the cheers with a slight nod, then settled somewhere over her left shoulder, like she wasn't there at all. Lyra's stomach dropped. The head elder, Marcus Voss, Darian's father, stepped forward, raising one hand for silence. The crowd obeyed immediately, 5,000 voices cutting off mid-shout. The sudden quiet felt wrong, heavy, like the air before a lightning strike. Marcus was older than he looked, Lyra knew. 70-something, but wolf genetics kept him looking 50. His hair had gone silver, but his frame remained solid, his presence undeniable. He'd led House Voss for 4 decades, expanded their territory, negotiated truces with neighboring packs, built an empire on the backs of wolves who knew better than to question him. And now he looked directly at Lyra for the first time in her life. His lip curled. "We gather," he said, voice carrying effortlessly across the arena, "under the claiming moon to honor the bonds that strengthen our pack. Tonight, wolves will step forward, mates will be claimed, our future will be forged." The crowd murmured approval. Marcus continued, "But not all bonds serve the pack. Not all matches strengthen us." His gaze didn't leave Lyra's face. "Some bonds are mistakes." The murmuring stopped. Lyra felt the blood drain from her face. Around the arena, wolves leaned forward, sensing something delicious about to happen. Darian still wouldn't look at her. "Tonight," Marcus said slowly, savoring each word, "my son will demonstrate what true leadership requires. Not blind obedience to fate, not weak surrender to accident, but choice, strength, the courage to reject what would weaken us." Oh God. "Darian," Marcus said, turning to his son. "Step forward." Darian moved like a machine. 3 strides, each one precise, closing the distance between them until he stood directly in front of Lyra. This close, she could see the muscle working in his jaw, could feel the bond humming between them, confused and frantic. "Look at me," she whispered. He didn't. "Darian Voss," Marcus called out, formal now, using the old language. "Do you claim this wolf as your mate before the moon and the ancestors?" The silence was absolute. Darian's hand flexed at his side. Just once. A tiny movement most people probably missed. Lyra didn't miss it. "Please," she breathed, so quiet only he could hear. "Don't?" "No." The word cut like a blade. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath that seemed to suck all the oxygen from the arena. Darian finally met her eyes. His were flat, empty, like looking into a frozen lake. "I reject this bond," he said, louder now, playing to the audience. "I reject this wolf. She is weak, low-born, unworthy of House Voss and unworthy of me." Each word landed like a physical blow. Lyra stumbled backward, not from his words, but from the bond itself, twisting, writhing, beginning to tear. Rejection wasn't just emotional, it was physical. The thread connecting them started to fray, and the sensation was like being ripped in half from the inside. She gasped, pressing one hand to her chest. The crowd loved it. "Look at her! She's falling apart! Someone catch her before she collapses!" Laughter. So much laughter. The same sharp-voiced woman from before cackled like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. Marcus stepped forward, placing one hand on his son's shoulder. Proud. Approving. "The bond is rejected," he announced. "Let no one speak of it again." Darian turned away. Just like that. No hesitation. No looking back. He walked toward the eastern exit with his father and brother flanking him, leaving Lyra alone in the center of the arena while 5,000 wolves jeered. She couldn't breathe. The bond was still breaking, slower than she'd expected, each tear sending fresh waves of pain through her chest. Her vision blurred. The torches swam in and out of focus. Someone threw something, she didn't see what, and it hit her shoulder, bounced off. More laughter. "Get out of the arena, Ashen! Go crawl back to whatever hole you came from. Weak little—" The voice cut off mid-insult. Something had changed. Lyra felt it before she understood it. A shift in the air, a sudden tension that made the hairs on her arms stand up. The laughter died. The jeering stopped. Even the torches seemed to dim, like the fire itself had gotten nervous. She lifted her head. On the western edge of the arena, where the shadows were deepest, someone was standing. Not just someone. Him. The crowd recognized him the same moment Lyra did. The reaction was immediate. 5,000 wolves going absolutely still, barely breathing. A few in the lower tiers actually took a step back. Alpha King Ronan Virel had arrived. Lyra had never seen him in person before. No one from the outer territories had. The Alpha King didn't visit places like this. He ruled from the capital, from the ancient fortress where his family had held power for 3 centuries. The stories said he was a ghost, a monster, a wolf who'd killed his own father to take the throne. The stories said a lot of things, most of them contradictory, all of them delivered in whispers. But looking at him now, Lyra believed every single one. He was tall, taller than Darian, taller than anyone she'd ever seen, with the kind of build that suggested violence held carefully in check. Black clothing, black hair worn longer than fashion dictated, sharp features that might have been handsome if they weren't so severe. And his eyes. Even from across the arena, she could feel the weight of his gaze. Gold. Not brown, not amber. Gold. Like molten metal, like nothing human. He moved forward. Not hurrying, not hesitating, just walking across the arena floor with the same inevitable quality as nightfall. The crowd parted where he approached the tiers, people pressing backward to give him space, like he was something toxic that might burn on contact. No one spoke. No one even whispered. Ronan stopped 10 feet from Lyra. Up close, he was worse. Scars marked his face, one through his left eyebrow, another along his jaw. His hands were scarred too, she noticed. Knuckles that had been broken and healed wrong. This wasn't a wolf who'd been protected his whole life. This was a wolf who'd survived. He looked at her the way someone might look at an interesting problem. "Stand up," he said. His voice was low, rough-edged, the kind of sound that didn't need volume to command attention. Lyra realized she'd sunk to her knees at some point. The bond pain was still there, a dull throb in her chest, but shock had mostly overridden it. She pushed herself upright on shaking legs. "What's your name?" Ronan asked. "Lyra." Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Lyra Ashen." But something flickered in those gold eyes. Not quite amusement, not quite recognition. "No family name," he observed. "No." "Lowborn?" "Yes." And rejected. He said it without inflection, like stating a fact about the weather. Lyra's throat tightened. She managed a nod. Ronan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving past her to where Darian and Marcus had stopped near the eastern exit. The Voss wolves had frozen, clearly uncertain whether to stay or run. Even Marcus looked uneasy. "Interesting," Ronan said finally. He turned back to Lyra and offered his hand. The gesture was so unexpected that Lyra just stared at it. His hand was large, scarred across the knuckles, the fingers long and calloused. Not the hand of someone who'd lived softly. "I don't," she started. "You have a choice," Ronan interrupted. "You can stay here and let them tear you apart. Or you can come with me." "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. His mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile. Something sharper. "Because I want to see what happens." The arena was so quiet Lyra could hear her own heartbeat. 5,000 wolves watching. Marcus Voss watching. Darian watching. His expression finally showing something. Shock maybe, or the beginning of anger. The bond between her and Darian gave one final agonizing twist, and then went still. Severed. Dead. She was free. She was nothing. She was standing in front of the most powerful wolf in the territory with absolutely nothing left to lose. Lyra reached out and took his hand. The reaction was instantaneous. Ronan's fingers closed around hers. Warm, solid, real. And something ignited. Not the bond. That was gone. This was something else entirely, a spark that raced up her arm and exploded in her chest, sudden and shocking and completely unfamiliar. Ronan's eyes widened fractionally. He felt it too. Before Lyra could process what was happening, Ronan pulled her forward, not rough, but not gentle either, and turned to face the crowd. "I claim this wolf," he announced. The words echoed across the arena like a thunderclap. Someone in the upper tiers made a choking sound. Someone else dropped what might have been a drinking flask. It clattered on stone, absurdly loud. Marcus Voss found his voice first. "You can't. She's been rejected. The bond is broken." "I'm aware," Ronan said. His tone suggested he found the observation boring. "I'm not claiming a bond. I'm claiming her." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I'm the Alpha King and I don't need grounds." Ronan's gaze swept the arena. "Anyone object?" Silence. Of course, silence. You didn't object to Ronan Virel unless you wanted to end up in several pieces. But Marcus wasn't done. He descended the steps carefully, his face flushed, barely containing his anger. "This is highly irregular. The Claiming Moon has protocols, which you already violated," Ronan interrupted. "Public rejection wasn't part of the ceremony. You added that for entertainment." His smile was a razor. "I'm simply following your example." Darian stepped forward. "She's not worth... Careful." The single word from Ronan carried enough weight to stop Darian mid-sentence. "You just spent 10 minutes explaining how worthless she is. Now you want to argue her value?" Darian's jaw worked, but nothing came out. Ronan looked down at Lyra. "Can you walk?" Could she? Her legs felt like water. Her chest hurt. Her entire world had been torn down and rebuilt in the span of 5 minutes, and she wasn't sure which direction was up anymore. But she nodded. "Good." Ronan started toward the western exit, still holding her hand. "We're leaving." The crowd parted like he was a blade cutting through fabric. No one spoke. No one even breathed loud enough to be heard. They just watched as the Alpha King walked out of the arena with the girl they'd been mocking moments before. Lyra glanced back once. Darian was staring after them, his expression unreadable. Marcus looked murderous, and the crowd, the same wolves who'd laughed at her humiliation, now looked confused, uncertain, maybe a little afraid. The night air hit her face as they emerged from the arena into the courtyard beyond. Cooler, cleaner. The crimson moon hung directly overhead, full and heavy and impossibly red. Ronan didn't release her hand until they reached a waiting vehicle, black, expensive-looking, flanked by guards who snapped to attention at his approach. "Get in," he said. Lyra hesitated. "Where are we going?" "The capital." He pulled open the rear door. "You're under my protection now. That means you come with me." "I don't understand." She hated how small her voice sounded. "Why did you do that?" Ronan studied her for a moment, those gold eyes catching the moonlight. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what?" "What you are." He gestured toward the vehicle. "Get in. We'll talk once we're out of Voss territory." She climbed in because what else was she going to do? The interior smelled like leather and something else. Pine, maybe, or snow. Ronan settled into the seat across from her, taking up more space than seemed physically reasonable. The door closed. The engine started. They pulled away from the arena, from the crowd, from everything Lyra had ever known. Through the tinted window, she watched the courtyard disappear, watched the stone walls of the Voss estate fade into darkness. The vehicle picked up speed, heading north toward the mountain pass that led to the capital. "You're shaking," Ronan observed. She was. Couldn't seem to stop. Lyra wrapped her arms around herself and focused on breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. "Shock," Ronan said. "Normal after bond severance. It'll pass." "You sound like you've seen it before." "I have." Something in his tone made her look up. He was watching her with that same analytical expression, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "What did you mean," Lyra asked slowly, "when you said, 'I don't know what I am'?" Ronan leaned back, shadows falling across his face. "Your mother. What was her name?" "Elena." The name still hurt to say, even after 3 years. "Elena Ashen." "And your father?" "I don't know. She never told me." "Did she tell you anything about her family, where she came from?" Lyra shook her head. She said it didn't matter, that the past was dead and we should focus on surviving. Smart woman. Ronan was quiet for a moment. But wrong about one thing. What? The past isn't dead. His gold eyes caught hers. Not for you, and not for the wolves who just made a very serious mistake. The vehicle climbed into the mountains, leaving the Voss territory behind. Through the window, Lyra could see the lights of the estate growing smaller, could see the arena where she'd been humiliated, where she'd been rejected, where she'd been saved by a monster. When we arrive at the capital, Ronan said, you'll be given quarters, guards, anything you need. Tomorrow, we'll begin. Begin what? His smile was sharp enough to cut. Finding out why your bloodline was worth killing for, and why someone went to great lengths to make sure you never learned the truth. Lyra's breath caught. What are you talking about? But Ronan had already turned away, his attention on something outside the window. The conversation apparently was over. She sat back, her mind spinning. This morning she'd been nothing. An outcast. A joke. The girl who did laundry and kept her head down and tried desperately not to be noticed. Now she was in a vehicle with the Alpha King heading toward the capital, while he casually mentioned her bloodline and killing and truth. The bond pain had faded to a dull ache. Something else had taken its place. That strange spark she'd felt when Ronan touched her hand. It was still there, humming quietly under her skin, warm and insistent. Not a bond. Something else. What am I? She wondered. The mountains rose around them, dark and ancient. The blood moon watched from above, and somewhere behind them, in an arena packed with wolves who'd thought they knew how the night would end, Marcus and Darian Voss were realizing they'd made an enemy of exactly the wrong person. The vehicle drove on into darkness, and Lyra Ashen, for the first time in her life, stopped looking backward. The capital appeared at dawn like something out of a fever dream. Lyra had spent the entire night pressed against the vehicle window, watching mountains give way to forests, forests give way to valleys, darkness slowly bleeding into gray light. She hadn't slept, couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Darian's face, that flat, empty expression as he rejected her in front of everyone. But now, cresting the final hill, sleep was the last thing on her mind. The city sprawled across the valley floor like a living thing, all stone and metal and impossibly tall buildings that caught the sunrise and threw it back in shades of gold and silver. She'd heard stories about the capital, everyone had, but stories didn't prepare you for the reality of it, the sheer size. Streets wide enough for 6 vehicles abreast, structures that seemed to defy gravity. And at the center, rising above everything else, the fortress. Black stone, sharp angles, ancient beyond measure, the seat of the Alpha King. We're here, Ronan said unnecessarily. He'd been silent most of the journey, his attention fixed on documents one of the guards had handed him during a brief stop. Lyra had tried not to stare, but it was difficult. In the close confines of the vehicle, his presence was overwhelming. He took up space in a way that had nothing to do with physical size, and everything to do with something else. Power, maybe. Or danger. Probably both. The vehicle descended into the city proper. Early morning traffic parted around them. People actually stopped what they were doing to watch them pass. Not casual interest, something closer to fear. They recognize your vehicle, Lyra said. They recognize what it means. Ronan didn't look up from his documents. The Alpha King doesn't make social calls. Then why are you here? I'm not here. I'm returning home. There's a difference. The distinction felt important, though Lyra couldn't quite grasp why. They drove through increasingly wealthy districts, homes that grew larger and more ornate with each block, gardens that probably cost more to maintain than most wolves earned in a year. The people here looked different too, cleaner, better fed. They wore clothing that fit properly and walked with the casual confidence of individuals who'd never worried about their next meal. Lyra glanced down at her own clothes, the borrowed canvas pants, the thin shirt that had seen better days. She felt like a stain on expensive fabric. The fortress gates opened without the vehicle slowing. Guards in black uniforms saluted as they passed, their expressions neutral, but their posture rigid. Everything was rigid here, controlled. Nothing like the chaotic sprawl of the Voss outer territories. They pulled into a courtyard that could have fit the entire arena from last night with room to spare. The vehicle stopped. A guard opened Ronan's door immediately. Another moved toward Lyra's side but hesitated, clearly uncertain of protocol. Ronan solved the problem by walking around and opening her door himself. "Out," he said. Lyra climbed out on shaking legs. The courtyard was ringed with columns, each one carved with symbols she didn't recognize. The air smelled different here, cleaner, colder, like stone and metal and old power. This way. Ronan started toward an entrance without checking if she followed. She followed. Inside, the fortress was exactly as overwhelming as outside. Vaulted ceilings, polished floors that reflected torchlight, tapestries depicting battles she didn't recognize. Servants in dark uniforms moved through the halls with practiced efficiency, their eyes sliding past Lyra like she was invisible. Maybe she was compared to the man walking ahead of her. Ronan led her through a maze of corridors, up 2 flights of stairs, down another hallway, until they reached a heavy wooden door with iron reinforcement. He pushed it open. "Your quarters." Lyra stepped inside and froze. The room was bigger than the entire dwelling she'd shared with her mother. A bed that could fit 4 people. A sitting area with actual furniture. Windows overlooking the city. A door that presumably led to a private bathroom. It was absurd, excessive, wrong. "I can't," she started. "You can, and you will." Ronan gestured to a wardrobe against the far wall. "Clothes. They might not fit perfectly, but they're better than what you're wearing. Someone will bring food, eat, rest. This afternoon, we begin." "Begin what?" "Testing." He was already turning to leave. "Wait." Lyra caught his arm without thinking, then immediately regretted it when he went absolutely still. His muscles were like stone under her fingers. She let go quickly. "I need to understand what's happening. Last night you said things about my bloodline and killing and truth. What did you mean?" Ronan looked at her for a long moment. Whatever he saw made something shift in his expression. Not quite softening, but maybe acknowledging she deserved more than cryptic statements. "Your mother," he said slowly, "was not from the outer territories. She was highborn, very highborn. And she disappeared 24 years ago after refusing a political marriage." The words didn't make sense. Lyra shook her head. "No, we were poor. She did washing and mending. She hid." Ronan's gold eyes held hers, successfully, for over 2 decades. "Raised you in obscurity, kept you safe." "Safe from what?" "From people who would have killed you both if they'd known where to look." He paused. "Your mother's family was House Embrys, first Flamekeepers, direct descendants of the original Alpha line." House Embrys. Even Lyra, raised in poverty and ignorance, knew that name. The stories said they'd gone extinct a generation ago. Wiped out during the territorial wars, their bloodline considered too dangerous to let survive. "That's not possible," she whispered. "It's not only possible, it's provable. The moment I touched you last night, I felt it. The old magic, dormant but present." Ronan's expression was unreadable. "You have fire in your veins, Lyra Ashen. Your mother clearly never taught you to use it, probably hoping you'd never need to, but it's there. Fire. Magic. Bloodlines that were supposed to be dead." Lyra's knees went weak. She sat down hard on the edge of the massive bed. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "'Cause in about 6 hours, every major house in the territory is going to know I claimed you. They're going to ask questions, demand answers, and when they learn who you really are, some of them are going to want you dead." Ronan crossed to the door. "So we have 6 hours to make sure you can defend yourself." He left before she could respond. Lyra sat in the too large room in the too large fortress and tried to process information that refused to process. Her mother, highborn. Herself, descended from a line that was supposed to be extinct. Magic in her veins. It was insane. Except that spark when Ronan touched her hand. She'd felt something. Something that definitely wasn't normal. She looked down at her palms. Ordinary. Calloused from years of washing other people's clothes. No fire. No magic. Just skin and bone and confusion. A knock at the door made her jump. "Enter," she called, trying to sound like someone who belonged in a room like this and failing miserably. A servant entered. Middle-aged woman, gray hair pulled back severely, carrying a tray laden with more food than Lyra typically saw in a week. bread, cheese, fruit, some kind of meat, a pitcher of what smelled like fresh juice. The woman set the tray on a low table without meeting Lyra's eyes. The Alpha King requests you eat and then dress. Someone will come for you at midday. Wait, Lyra said as the woman turned to leave. What's your name? The servant paused, clearly surprised by the question. Marta. Thank you, Marta, for the food. Something flickered in Marta's expression. Not quite warmth, but maybe the beginning of it. She nodded once and left. Lyra forced herself to eat, though her stomach protested. The food was good, better than good. Each bite felt like an insult to every meal she'd ever scraped together. After, she opened the wardrobe. Ronan hadn't been lying about the clothes, pants that would actually fit, shirts made from fabric that didn't feel like canvas, a jacket lined with something soft. She changed mechanically, catching her reflection in a mirror near the window. She looked wrong. The clothes were too nice. Her hair was a mess. Her face was pale and drawn and completely out of place in this room, in this fortress, in this life. Who am I? She wondered again. The question didn't have an answer. Not yet. She spent the next hours trying to rest, failing and staring out the window at the city below. People moved like ants through the streets. Normal people with normal lives who weren't being told they had magic in their blood and enemies who wanted them dead. At midday exactly, another knock. Come in. The door opened to reveal a woman Lyra had never seen before. Tall, lean, with short dark hair and eyes that assessed Lyra in approximately 2 seconds flat. She wore black clothing similar to the guards but without any insignia. You're Lyra, the woman said. Not a question. Yes. I'm Kess, head of the King's Guard. I'll be overseeing your training. Training for what? Kess smiled, sharp and humorless. Survival. Let's go. She led Lyra deeper into the fortress, downstairs Lyra didn't remember climbing, through sections that felt older and colder. They passed training rooms where wolves sparred with an intensity that made Lyra's previous understanding of combat look like children playing. No one looked up as they passed. No one acknowledged them at all. Finally, Kess stopped at a door reinforced with metal and what looked like old ceremonial marks. Inside, she said. The king is waiting. Lyra pushed the door open. The room beyond was circular, windowless, lit by torches set into the walls at regular intervals. The floor was bare stone, marked with symbols similar to those in the courtyard. And in the center, dressed in simple black training clothes, stood Ronan. He looked different somehow, more relaxed, or maybe more dangerous. Lyra couldn't decide which. Good, he said when he saw her. You came. Did I have a choice? No, but I appreciate the illusion. He gestured for her to approach. Stand in the center. Lyra obeyed, her heart hammering. The stone under her feet felt warm. Not hot, but definitely warmer than it should be. Ronan circled her slowly, those gold eyes taking in every detail. Your mother never trained you. Trained me in what? Using what you are. He stopped in front of her. The Empress line carried flame, not metaphorical, actual fire. They could summon it, control it, weaponize it. It made them powerful and terrifying in equal measure. I can't do that, Lyra said quickly. You haven't tried. I've never felt anything like liar. The word stopped her cold. Ronan stepped closer. Last night, when I took your hand, you felt something. Don't pretend you didn't. She had. That spark. That warmth. That wasn't fire, she protested. That was just, I don't know what that was. It was your magic recognizing mine. Ronan held up one hand. Between one breath and the next, his palm ignited. Actual flames, gold-white and writhing, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Lyra stumbled backward. How? The Virel line carries lightning, power, control. The flames vanished as quickly as they'd appeared. We're the only bloodline that survived the purges because we were strong enough to defend ourselves. House Empress wasn't as lucky. They were all killed. Almost all. His gaze was pointed. Your mother survived, had a child, hid that child for 23 years. And now that child is standing in my training room, about to learn what she's capable of. Lyra's hands were shaking again. What if I can't do it? Then you'll die when Marcus Voss sends someone to eliminate the threat you represent. The bluntness was almost refreshing in its honesty. How long do I have? She asked. Days, maybe less. Ronan moved to the edge of the circle. The rejection last night wasn't just personal. It was political. Marcus has been consolidating power, building alliances. A resurgent Empress bloodline threatens everything he's built. I'm not resurgent. I'm just, you're alive. That's enough. He gestured to the center of the circle. Now stop talking and focus. For the next 3 hours, Ronan put Lyra through exercises that seemed designed to break her. He made her stand perfectly still while he described her mother's death in clinical detail, watching for any emotional response that might trigger her power. Nothing. He had her run until her lungs burned, then pushed her beyond that point, waiting for desperation to unlock something. Nothing. He even tried startling her, a controlled burst of his own magic that made the air crackle and every hair on her body stand up. Still nothing. By the time he finally called a halt, Lyra was on her hands and knees, gasping for breath, sweat dripping onto the warm stone. I told you, she panted. I can't do it. You won't do it. Ronan crouched beside her. There's a difference. Your mother trained you very well. To suppress, to hide, to be invisible. Now you need to unlearn all of that. How? By wanting it badly enough. He stood, offering his hand. Again tomorrow, same time. Lyra let him pull her up. His hand was warm, calloused, steady. The spark was there again. That strange warmth under her skin. But it faded the moment he released her. I should mention, Ronan said as they headed for the door, the council is convening tonight. They'll want to meet you. The council? Representatives from the major houses. They advise the crown. Theoretically. His tone suggested what he thought of that arrangement. They're going to ask questions. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but it would be politically wise to at least appear. Appear as what? I'm nobody. You're the wolf I claimed in front of witnesses under a blood moon. That makes you very much somebody. He paused. And if my suspicions about your bloodline are correct, which they are, you're potentially the most powerful wolf in this room who doesn't know it yet. The council met in a chamber near the top of the fortress, all dark wood and high windows, and an oppressive sense of history. Lyra stood near the entrance, dressed in clothes Kes had delivered, nicer than before, clearly chosen to send a message, while Ronan took his place at the head of a massive table. 14 wolves sat around that table. Lyra recognized none of them, but their body language told her everything she needed to know. These were predators. Leaders. Wolves who'd clawed their way to power and held it through strength and cunning, and they were all staring at her. This is highly irregular, an older man said without preamble. He had gray hair and cold blue eyes, and the kind of face that suggested he rarely smiled. You leave to attend a claiming ceremony and return with an unclaimed Omega from the outer territories. Lyra Ashen, another council member, a woman with severe features, said slowly, no family name, no house affiliation, rejected by the Voss heir. She looked at Ronan. Explain. No, Ronan said simply. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. You owe this council, the old man started. I owe this council exactly nothing. Ronan's voice was calm but absolute. I claimed her. That's the end of the discussion. It's the beginning of about 50 discussions, a younger man interjected. Marcus Voss is already spreading rumors. He's saying you overstepped, that you humiliated his son for political gain. Marcus Voss can say whatever he wants from whatever hole he's currently hiding in. He's demanding a formal apology. He can demand the moon while he's at it. He'll get neither. The severe woman leaned forward. This girl has a name, Kes said sharply from her position near the door. Use it. Several council members looked startled. Apparently Kes didn't usually speak during these meetings. The woman recovered quickly. Lyra, then. What house does she belong to? None, Lyra said before Ronan could answer. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. My mother raised me alone. I have no house. Then your mother's name. Elena Ashen. The room went very, very quiet. The old man stood slowly. Ashen is not a family name. It's what fugitives call themselves when they're running from something. Or running towards safety, Lyra countered. Safety from what? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer without revealing things Ronan clearly wasn't ready to make public. Another council member, a broad-shouldered man with scarred hands, spoke up. The king has the right to claim whoever he chooses. This seems like a waste of council time. Unless there's something we should know, the severe woman said, her gaze moving between Ronan and Lyra. Is there? Ronan stood. The council is dismissed. We haven't finished. You have now. He gestured toward the door. Out. They left, but not happily. Lyra could feel their stares burning into her back as they filed past. The last to leave was the old man, who paused near her. Whatever you're hiding, he said quietly, it won't stay hidden long. Secrets have a way of surfacing at the worst possible time. Then he was gone. Lyra sagged against the wall. That went well. That went exactly as expected. Ronan moved to the window, looking out at the city below. They're afraid. Good. Fear makes them cautious. They think I'm nobody. They think you're a complication. There's a difference. He glanced back at her. How are you feeling? Tired? Confused? Terrified? Normal then. Something that might have been humor flickered in his eyes. Go rest. Tomorrow, we train harder. Lyra started to leave, then stopped. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Protecting me. Training me. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. 3 years ago, my mate died. The bond killed her. A curse that's followed my bloodline for generations. Every wolf I've claimed has died within months. Every single one. Lyra's breath caught. So when I touched you last night, Ronan continued, and felt power instead of death, I got curious. And when I realized what you might be, I got strategic. House Embers Flame could break a viral curse, if the legends are true. You're using me. I'm giving you a chance to survive. What you do with it is up to you. He turned back to the window. We use each other, or we both die. Those are the options. It should have hurt. Should have felt like another rejection, another person seeing her as a tool rather than a person. Instead, Lyra felt something strange, almost like respect. At least Ronan was honest about it. She left him there and made her way back through the fortress maze to her quarters. Marta had left another tray of food, which Lyra ate mechanically. Then she collapsed on the too large bed and stared at the ceiling, magic in her blood, a curse on Ronan, enemies who wanted her dead, training that wasn't working. She should have been crying, should have been terrified, should have been plotting her escape. Instead, she felt that warmth under her skin again, faint but present, like embers that might catch fire if she just knew how to breathe on them right. Sleep took her eventually, dragging her down into dreams of flame and smoke and her mother's voice saying something she couldn't quite hear. She woke to screaming. Not her own. Outside. In the courtyard, or maybe the streets beyond. Lyra stumbled to the window, her heart racing. Below, the city was burning. Not the whole thing, just sections. Buildings near the fortress walls, lit up like torches against the night sky. People ran through the streets, guards mobilized, and somewhere close, she heard fighting. The door slammed open. Kess stood there, armed and wild-eyed. Get away from the window, she barked. Now! Lyra obeyed. What's happening? Marcus Voss didn't wait. Kess grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. He sent Darian and a strike force. They're here for you. The world tilted. How many? Lyra asked. Too many. They ran through corridors Lyra didn't recognize. The king is holding the main gate, but they breached the east wall. We need to get you somewhere safe. Where is safe? Nowhere. Kess pulled her down a narrow staircase, but some places are safer than others. They emerged into a lower level, stone corridors, minimal lighting, the smell of old earth. Kess moved fast, her weapon drawn, checking each corner before proceeding. Behind them, Lyra heard footsteps. Multiple people. Moving fast. They're close, she whispered. I know. Kess shoved her toward a heavy door. Inside, lock it. Don't open it for anyone except me or the king. What about you? I'll buy you time. Kess's smile was fierce. Go. Lyra went, slipping through the door into darkness. She heard Kess's footsteps retreating, heard shouts, the clash of weapons. Then silence. She stood in the dark, her back against cold stone, and felt that warmth again, stronger now, almost painful. The embers in her blood were burning hotter, responding to the fear and adrenaline flooding her system. Footsteps approached the door. Slow, deliberate, wrong. A voice called through the wood, familiar and hated. Lyra, I know you're in there. Darian, open the door, he continued. Make this easy. She didn't respond, didn't move, barely breathed. My father wants you dead, Darian said. I'm supposed to make it quick, painless. A mercy, considering. He paused. But if you make me break down this door, I can't promise mercy. The warmth under her skin was building. Lyra pressed her palms against the stone wall, trying to control it, trying to suppress it the way her mother had taught her. But her mother had taught her wrong. Suppression had kept her alive, but it wouldn't keep her alive now. The door shook as something heavy slammed into it from outside. Once, twice, wood beginning to splinter. Lyra closed her eyes. Fire in your veins, Ronan had said. Another impact. The door cracked. Your mother trained you to suppress, he'd said. Now you need to unlearn. She stopped fighting it. The warmth exploded outward, racing through her body like liquid gold. Her hands ignited, actual flames, silver white and searing, spreading up her arms like living things. The door burst open. Darian stood there, backlit by torchlight, his face registering shock approximately 1 second too late. Lyra raised her burning hands and screamed. Fire poured from her palms like water from a broken dam, raw, uncontrolled, furious. It filled the corridor, drove Darian backward, set the walls themselves burning. She couldn't stop it, didn't want to stop it. This was what she was, what she'd always been. And everyone who'd ever mocked her, rejected her, tried to kill her, was about to learn exactly what that meant. The flames consumed everything. Darian threw himself backward, slamming into the opposite wall as fire roared through the corridor like a living creature. The heat was impossible. Lyra could feel it scorching the air, turning oxygen into something thick and hard to breathe, but it didn't burn her. The silver-white fire writhed around her hands, up her arms, dancing across her skin like it belonged there, because it did. What the hell? Darian's voice was raw, panicked. He scrambled to his feet, weapon drawn but useless against the wall of flame between them. Lyra stepped forward. The fire moved with her, responding to intention she didn't fully understand. This wasn't control. This was rage given form. You rejected me, she said, and her voice sounded wrong, layered, resonant, like multiple people speaking at once. Called me weak, unworthy. Lyra, wait! You humiliated me in front of everyone. Another step. The flames grew brighter, hotter. The stone walls were beginning to crack from the heat. And now you're here to kill me because I'm too dangerous to let live. Darian's face was slick with sweat. Behind him, she could hear shouting, his strike force probably, realizing something had gone very wrong with their simple assassination mission. My father gave the order, Darian said quickly. Not me, I'm just following orders. The flames roared higher. Like you followed orders when you rejected me. Like you'll follow orders your entire pathetic life because you've never had an original thought in your head. Something crossed his expression. Not quite anger. Closer to recognition. You're not weak anymore. I was never weak. You were just too stupid to see it. She raised both hands. The fire gathered itself, coalescing into something more focused, more intentional. She had no idea what she was doing, no training, no control, just instinct and fury, and 23 years of suppression finally breaking free. The fireball that formed between her palms was the size of her head, spinning slowly, crackling with contained violence. Darian's eyes went wide. Lyra, don't! She threw it, not at him, at the wall behind him. The impact was devastating. Stone exploded outward, debris flying everywhere, the entire corridor shaking from the force. The blast threw Darian forward onto his hands and knees, coughing in the sudden dust cloud. Lyra walked past him without looking back. The fire was still burning, but quieter now, less wild. It clung to her skin like a second layer, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She could feel it waiting, ready to respond if she needed it. She needed it. The corridor opened into a larger chamber where Darian's strike force had gathered. 8 wolves, all armed, all freezing mid-movement when they saw her. More specifically, when they saw what she'd become. A girl wrapped in silver-white flames that cast dancing shadows across their shocked faces. "Stand down," one of them said, his voice cracking slightly. "The king wants her alive." "The king wants her dead," another corrected. "Marcus Voss, you idiot, not—" "I don't care which king you're talking about," Lyra interrupted. The fire flared brighter. "Get out." Nobody moved. She sighed. "Fine." The flames exploded outward in a wave that sent all 8 wolves scrambling for cover. She wasn't trying to kill them, wasn't sure she could kill them even if she wanted to. But the message was clear. Get out or burn. They got out. Lyra stood alone in the chamber, breathing hard, the fire slowly dying down to embers around her hands. Her entire body was shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion. Whatever she'd just done had cost her something, drained some reservoir she didn't know existed. Footsteps behind her. Fast. Familiar. She spun, fire flaring again. "Easy," Ronan said, holding up both hands. He stood in the corridor entrance, looking entirely unbothered by the destruction around him. If anything, he looked pleased. "It's me." The flames guttered out. Lyra sagged against the nearest wall. "They came for me." "I noticed." He moved closer, his gold eyes scanning her face. "Darian?" "Ran." "Smart of him." Ronan glanced at the hole she'd blown in the wall. "You awakened." "I didn't mean to. He was going to break down the door, and I couldn't—" She stopped, trying to catch her breath. "I couldn't suppress it anymore." "Good." He offered his hand. "Can you walk?" She could, barely. Her legs felt like water and her head was swimming, but she pushed herself upright and followed Ronan back through the fortress. They passed guards securing the breached sections, servants cleaning up debris, wounded being carried to the medical wing. The damage was worse than she'd realized. Entire sections of the east wall were collapsed. Buildings in the lower city were still burning. This wasn't a simple raid. This was an act of war. "How many?" she asked quietly. "Dead? 12 of theirs, 5 of ours." Ronan's jaw was tight. "Could have been worse. Would have been if you hadn't taken out half their strike force single-handedly." "I didn't. I just scared them." "You manifested flame magic with 0 training and no preparation. That's not scaring. That's announcing your existence to everyone within 50 miles who has the ability to sense these things." Lyra stopped walking. "What does that mean?" Ronan turned to face her. In the flickering torchlight, his expression was grim. "It means Marcus Voss isn't your only problem anymore. There are wolves across the territory, across multiple territories, who've spent decades making sure House Embrys stayed extinct. The moment you lit up like a signal fire, you told all of them you're alive and active. So I'm dead. So you learned to fight." He started walking again, fast. They climbed back to the upper levels, but Ronan didn't take her to her quarters. Instead, he led her to a different wing entirely, one she hadn't seen before. The corridors here were older, the walls lined with portraits of wolves who looked like they'd been painted centuries ago. He stopped at a door carved with symbols that made Lyra's skin prickle. "What is this place?" she asked. "Archives. Records of every major bloodline, every significant event, every war and treaty and betrayal." He pushed the door open. "Everything we know about House Embrys is in here. If you want to understand what you are, start reading." The room beyond was enormous, floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books and scrolls and documents that probably predated the fortress itself. A fire burned in a massive hearth, casting warm light across reading tables and chairs worn smooth from centuries of use. An old man sat at one of the tables, so still Lyra initially mistook him for another piece of furniture. He looked up as they entered, his eyes, one brown, one milky white, focusing on Lyra with unsettling intensity. "So it's true," he said, his voice like gravel. "House Embrys lives." "Lyra," Ronan said, "meet Kale, Royal Archivist and the most irritating wolf I've ever met." "You're too kind." Kale stood slowly, joints cracking. He moved closer to Lyra, studying her face. "You have your mother's eyes. Elena was always beautiful, stubborn, reckless." "You knew her?" "Knew of her. Everyone knew of her. The Empress heir who refused to marry into House Draven chose exile instead. He shook his head. We all assumed Marcus Voss's hunters found her years ago. They didn't. Clearly, Cale gestured to the shelves. Your family history is extensive and mostly violent. Where would you like to start? Lyra looked at Ronan. He nodded slightly. Permission, or maybe encouragement. Start with why they wanted us dead, she said. Cale's laugh was sharp and humorless. That's a longer story than you think. Sit. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of information that fundamentally rewrote Lyra's understanding of everything. Cale pulled book after book, scroll after scroll, laying out a history she'd never known existed. House Embers hadn't just been powerful. They'd been the power. The original Alpha line descended from the first wolves to manifest elemental magic. Firekeepers, flamecallers, warriors who could burn armies and reshape territories. For centuries, they'd maintained balance, not through conquest, but through the threat of absolute destruction if anyone pushed too far. Then the territorial wars started. Houses that had chafed under Embers authority saw opportunity. Marcus Voss's grandfather, allied with House Draven and 3 other major families, orchestrated what they called a restructuring. What it actually was, systematic genocide. Over the course of 5 years, they hunted down every Embers wolf they could find, executed them, burned their homes, erased them from official records. By the time the purge ended, House Embers was extinct, except it wasn't. Your grandmother survived, Cale explained, pointing to a family tree that made Lyra's head spin. Elara Embers. She went into hiding with her daughter, your mother, Elena. They lived quietly for 15 years. Then Marcus's hunters found them. What happened? Elara died buying time for Elena to escape. Your mother ran, changed her name, disappeared so completely that even Marcus eventually gave up looking. Cale's good eye fixed on Lyra. And then, 24 years ago, Elena had a child. You. Why didn't she tell me? Lyra's voice cracked. Why keep all this secret? Because telling you would have meant training you, and training you would have meant you'd eventually use your power. And using your power would have been like setting off a flare for every wolf who wants House Embers to stay dead. Cale closed the book gently. Your mother chose your life over your legacy. Can't say I blame her. Ronan, who'd been silent through most of the history lesson, spoke up. Except now the legacy found her anyway. It always does, Cale agreed. The question is what she plans to do about it. Both wolves looked at Lyra. She had no idea what to say. Part of her wanted to run, grab whatever she could carry and disappear the way her mother had. But another part, the part that had burned Darian Voss and his strike force, wanted something different, wanted to stop running. Teach me, she said finally. Everything, how to control the fire, how to fight, how to survive this. That's the spirit, Cale said dryly. Reckless, just like your mother. Ronan's expression was unreadable. It won't be easy. Nothing about this has been easy. And it gets worse before it gets better. Then it gets worse. Lyra met his gold eyes. I'm not hiding anymore. Something shifted in Ronan's face. Not quite approval. Closer to recognition. All right, we start tomorrow at dawn. Cale will handle the historical education. I'll handle the combat training. Kess will keep you alive between lessons. Assuming Kess survived the attack, Lyra said quietly. She did. She's in the medical wing getting stitches and threatening to murder whoever let Darian get past the east wall. Ronan moved toward the door. Get some rest. You're going to need it. After he left, Lyra sat in the archives with Cale, reading until her eyes burned and her brain refused to process any more information. The old wolf eventually dozed off in his chair, snoring softly, leaving Lyra alone with the weight of centuries. She traced her family tree with one finger. All these names. All these wolves who'd carried the same fire she'd manifested tonight. All dead now, killed for the crime of being too powerful, too dangerous, too much of a threat to the established order. Her mother had tried to protect her from this legacy. Instead, Lyra had walked right into it. She returned to her quarters sometime after midnight, exhausted and overwhelmed. Marta had left food again, cold now, but Lyra ate it anyway, suddenly ravenous. The fire magic had burned through her reserves completely. Sleep came fast but didn't last long. She woke to voices outside her door. Not shouting. Worse, quiet, urgent conversation that suggested something bad had happened. Lyra pulled on clothes and opened the door. Kes stood there, one arm in a sling, her face pale but her eyes sharp. Behind her, two guards Lyra didn't recognize. "What's wrong?" Lyra asked. "Council meeting, now, non-negotiable." Kes's jaw was tight. Marcus Voss sent a formal declaration of war, and something else. What else? A name, someone we thought was dead. Kes started walking, forcing Lyra to follow. Cale Draven. The name meant nothing to Lyra. "Who's that?" "Warlord, psychopath. The wolf who orchestrated the Empress Purge 30 years ago." Kes's voice was flat. "Apparently he's been in the northern waste this whole time, building an army, and now he's marching south." "Why now?" Kes glanced back at her. "Because you lit up half the capital last night. Because every wolf with magical sensitivity felt your awakening. Because Cale Draven has spent 3 decades waiting for a chance to finish what he started." They reached the council chamber, the same 14 wolves from before, plus Ronan at the head of the table. But the atmosphere was completely different now. No political posturing, no careful words. Just fear, barely controlled. "She shouldn't be here," the old council member said immediately when he saw Lyra. "She's the reason we're having this meeting," Ronan countered. "She stays." "This is beyond—" "I said she stays." Ronan's tone ended the argument. He gestured for Lyra to stand beside him. "Catch her up." The severe woman spoke, her voice clipped. 3 hours ago we received communication from the Northern Territories. Cale Draven has mobilized. He's moving south with an army of corrupted wolves, exiles, mercenaries, wolves twisted by dark magic we don't fully understand. "How many?" Lyra asked. "Intelligence says 3,000, maybe more." The number was staggering. Lyra tried to process it and failed. "Marcus Voss has also mobilized," another council member added. "He's calling in every alliance, every favor, every wolf loyal to House Voss. He's saying Ronan kidnapped you, that your awakening proves you're dangerous, that House Embry must be eliminated." "So we're fighting on 2 fronts, Lyra said slowly. "We're fighting on 3 fronts. The old man's voice was bitter. "Several council members are questioning whether protecting you is worth the cost. They're suggesting we hand you over to Marcus or Cale. End this before it escalates." Ronan's hand slammed down on the table hard enough to crack the wood. "Anyone suggesting that can leave now, permanently." Nobody moved. "Lyra is under my protection," Ronan continued, his voice deadly calm. "That doesn't change because Marcus threw a tantrum or because a ghost from the north decided to march south. We fight. We win. End of discussion. Against 3,000 corrupted wolves and Marcus Voss's combined forces?" The severe woman shook her head. "We don't have the numbers." "We have her." Ronan gestured to Lyra. "House Empress Flame, the magic that held the territories together for centuries." "She can barely control it," someone objected. "Then she learns. Fast." Lyra's throat was tight. All these wolves, all this power and politics and centuries of history, and somehow she was at the center of it. The girl who'd done laundry 3 days ago, the girl who'd been rejected and mocked and left to die. "I need to say something," she said quietly. The room went silent. Lyra took a breath. "You're right. I can barely control it. Last night I nearly burned down half the fortress trying to defend myself. I have no training, no experience, no idea what I'm doing." She looked around the table, meeting each council member's eyes. "But I'm not running, I'm not hiding, and I'm not letting you hand me over to people who want me dead just because it's politically convenient." "Noble," the old man said, "but impractical." "Maybe. But here's the thing. Marcus Voss and Cale Draven aren't coming for me because of politics. They're coming because they're terrified. They spent 30 years making sure House Embry stayed extinct, and now I'm here proving all that effort was wasted." She felt the fire stirring under her skin, responding to her emotion. "They're not going to stop, not ever. So we either fight now or we spend the rest of our very short lives running." The severe woman was studying her with new interest. "You're suggesting we go on the offensive." "I'm suggesting we stop reacting and start planning. They want war, give them war, but on our terms, not theirs." Ronan was looking at her with something that might have been pride, or maybe just surprise that she'd found her spine this quickly. "All right," he said. "We plan. But first, you train. because going to war with uncontrolled fire magic is suicide. The council meeting lasted another hour, devolving into logistics and strategy that made Lyra's head spin. She listened as they debated troop movements, supply lines, alliance possibilities. Listened as they argued about whether to evacuate the lower city or fortify it. Listened as they discussed exactly how much time they had before Kael's army arrived. Not long. Days, maybe. A week at most. When it finally ended, Ronan pulled her aside. "You did well in there," he said. "I didn't do anything. You stood up, spoke your mind, didn't let them intimidate you." His gold eyes held hers. "That's more than most wolves manage in their first council meeting. They hate me. They fear you. Different thing." He started walking, gesturing for her to follow. "Come on. If we're training you for war, we need to accelerate the timeline." He led her back to the circular training room, but this time they weren't alone. Kes was there despite her injury, along with 3 other wolves Lyra didn't recognize. All of them looked dangerous. All of them were staring at her. "These are my best fighters," Ronan said. "They're going to help train you." One of them, a woman with short blonde hair and a scar bisecting her face, laughed. "Train her or bury her?" "Both if necessary." Ronan gestured to the center of the circle. "Lyra, show them what you can do." She hesitated. "I don't know if I can. Last night I was terrified and angry, and it just happened." "Then get terrified and angry again." "That's not how—" "Actually, it is exactly how." Ronan's expression was serious. "For beginners, emotion is the trigger. You need to learn to access it without waiting for life or death situations." "How?" "By remembering every moment that made you feel powerless. Every humiliation, every rejection, every time someone treated you like you were nothing." He moved closer. "Channel it, shape it, use it." Lyra closed her eyes. It wasn't hard to find those memories, the arena, Darian's face, the crowd's laughter. 23 years of being invisible, being overlooked, being told through 1,000 tiny actions that she didn't matter. The fire stirred. She opened her eyes. Her hands were burning again, silver-white flames dancing across her palms. The blonde woman whistled. "Well, that's something." "Now throw it," Ronan said. Lyra looked around the room. "At what?" "Me." "You're insane." "Probably." He spread his arms. "Do it anyway." She gathered the fire, shaping it into a ball the way she had instinctively last night. It felt wrong, unnatural, like trying to hold water in cupped hands. But she managed it, compressed the flames into something coherent, and threw it. Ronan caught it, just reached out and grabbed the fireball mid-flight, his own power flaring, gold-white lightning that wrapped around her flames and absorbed them completely. The combined magic crackled and spat for a moment before dissipating. "Lightning and fire don't mix well," he said, "but they can coexist if controlled properly." Again. They trained for hours, Lyra throwing fire, Ronan deflecting or absorbing it, the other fighters offering critique that ranged from helpful to brutal. She learned that her flames burned hotter when she was angry, more controlled when she was focused, completely wild when she was afraid. She learned that maintaining the fire was exhausting. She learned that she'd been suppressing this power her entire life, and unlearning that suppression was like trying to rewire her brain. Halfway through the session, she collapsed. Just dropped to her knees, gasping, the fire guttering out completely. Her reserves were empty. Her body was done. Kes crouched beside her. "That's enough for today." "No." Lyra forced herself upright. "I need to—" "You need to rest before you burn yourself out." Kes's voice was firm. "Dead wolves can't fight wars." Ronan nodded. "She's right. We'll resume tomorrow." But tomorrow came faster than expected. Lyra was back in her quarters, half asleep, when the alarm bells started ringing. Not the warning bells from the raid. These were deeper, more urgent, the kind of sound that meant something catastrophic was happening. She ran to the window. On the northern horizon, the sky was dark. Not night dark, wrong dark, like something had reached up and torn a hole in the world itself. And moving beneath that darkness, visible even from this distance, was an army. Kael Draven had arrived early. The fortress erupted into controlled chaos, guards mobilizing, civilians evacuating, council members screaming orders. Lyra stood at her window, watching that impossible darkness creep closer and felt something cold settle in her chest. This was it. The war everyone had been preparing for, and she was nowhere near ready. A knock at her door. She opened it to find Ronan, already armored, his expression grim. "They're here," he said unnecessarily. "I see them." Kael sent a message. He wants to negotiate. Negotiate what? You, in exchange for withdrawing his army. Ronan's jaw was tight. He's giving us 1 hour to decide. Lyra looked back at the advancing darkness. Somewhere in that army was the wolf who'd orchestrated her family's genocide, who'd spent 3 decades building power in the northern wastes, who wanted to finish what he'd started. "What did you tell him?" she asked. Ronan's smile was sharp and vicious. "I told him to come and take you." The darkness crept closer. The fortress bells kept ringing, and Lyra realized with absolute clarity that this was the moment everything changed. No more training, no more preparation, just survival. She turned to Ronan. "Give me armor." "You're not ready." "I don't care. You said it yourself, emotion is the trigger. And right now I'm terrified and furious, and if I'm going to die anyway, I'd rather do it fighting." Something flickered in his gold eyes. Decision, or maybe respect. "All right," he said. "Suit up. We go to war." Outside, the darkness swallowed the northern sky like a living thing. And somewhere in that void, Kael Draven was laughing. The armor didn't fit right. Kes had scrounged it from somewhere in the fortress depths. Leather, reinforced with metal plates, designed for someone taller and broader than Lyra. The chest piece hung loose. The arm guards kept sliding down. But it was better than facing corrupted wolves in borrowed clothes. "Hold still," Kes muttered, adjusting the straps for the 3rd time. Her injured arm was in a sling, but she worked one-handed with practiced efficiency. "This is temporary. If you survive today, we'll get you proper gear." "Encouraging," Lyra said. "I don't believe in false hope." Kes tightened the last strap hard enough to make Lyra gasp. "There. You look almost like a warrior." "I look like a child playing dress-up." "Same thing, really. Most warriors are just pretending until muscle memory takes over." Kes stepped back, assessing her work. "The fire will do most of the heavy lifting. The armor just needs to keep you alive long enough to use it." Through the window, the darkness had crept closer. Lyra could make out details now. Not natural shadow, but something thicker, almost solid, like smoke given weight and purpose. It moved wrong, defying wind and logic, flowing across the ground like oil. And beneath it, shapes, thousands of them. "What are they?" Lyra asked quietly. Kes joined her at the window. "Corrupted. Wolves who traded their humanity for power. Kael's been experimenting in the northern wastes for decades. Dark magic, blood rituals, things that should have stayed buried." Her voice was flat. "They're stronger than normal wolves, faster, don't feel pain the same way, and they're absolutely loyal to Kael because he holds their leashes." "Can they be killed?" "Everything can be killed. Question is whether you can kill enough of them before they overwhelm you." Not exactly inspiring. A sharp knock at the door. One of Ronan's guards stuck his head in. "The king wants her on the north wall. Now." They moved through corridors transformed by war preparation. Servants carrying supplies, guards running drills. Wolves she'd never seen before, arriving from outlying territories to reinforce the capital's defenses. Everyone moved with purpose, but Lyra could feel the fear underneath. They knew what was coming. The north wall was chaos barely held in check. Ronan stood at the center, surrounded by commanders and council members, all arguing over maps and troop positions. He looked different in full armor, more dangerous, if that was possible. Black metal that seemed to drink light, etched with symbols that probably meant something to wolves who knew history. He glanced up when Lyra approached. Something shifted in his expression, not quite approval, but acknowledgement. "You look ridiculous," he said. "The armor doesn't fit." "I meant determined. It's a good look on you." He gestured to the wall's edge. "Come and see what we're facing." Lyra moved to the stone parapet and looked down. The fortress sat on a natural rise, giving them high ground advantage. Below, the northern approach was open terrain, a killing ground by design, nowhere for attackers to hide. Under normal circumstances, it would be nearly impossible to assault. These weren't normal circumstances. Kael's army had stopped just outside arrow range. Thousands of wolves, most of them wrong in ways Lyra's brain struggled to process. Some were too large, muscles bulging unnaturally. Others moved with jerky, insect-like motions. A few had eyes that glowed red even at this distance. And at the front, mounted on something that might once have been a horse, sat a figure in dark armor. "That's him," Ronan said quietly. "Kyle Draven." Even from here, Lyra could feel the wrongness radiating off the warlord. Not magical exactly, something deeper, like looking at a wound that refused to heal. He's been corrupted too, she realized. For longer than most. The dark magic sustains him, but it's eating him from the inside. He's more dead than alive at this point. Ronan's jaw was tight, which makes him more dangerous. Dead things don't feel fear. As they watched, 3 figures detached from Kyle's army and approached under a white banner. Negotiators, apparently, or messengers. "Let them come," Ronan ordered. The gates opened just wide enough to admit the 3 wolves. They were escorted up to the wall by guards who looked ready to kill them at the slightest provocation. The lead negotiator was young, maybe Lyra's age, with burn scars covering half his face. When he spoke, his voice was surprisingly steady. "Lord Kyle offers terms. Surrender the Empress girl by sundown. In exchange, he withdraws his army and the capital is spared." "Generous," Ronan said. "What happens to her?" "She stands trial for crimes against the territorial order. If found guilty, she burns. We know how this works." Ronan's tone was conversational. "Tell Kyle he can have her when he pries her from my cold, dead hands." The scarred wolf didn't flinch. Lord Kale anticipated that response. He asked me to clarify. By sundown, he means when the sun touches the western mountains. That gives you approximately 4 hours. And if we refuse? Then the army advances. The fortress falls. Everyone inside dies, including the girl. The wolf's eyes found Lyra. "Lord Kyle is patient. He's waited 30 years. He can wait a few more hours while you realize the situation is hopeless." Lyra stepped forward before Ronan could respond. The movement drew every eye on the wall. "I have a question," she said. The scarred wolf inclined his head slightly. "Ask." "Why does Kyle want me specifically? There are other bloodlines, other wolves with elemental magic. Why fixate on House Embry?" Something flickered in the wolf's expression. Not quite respect. Maybe curiosity. "You really don't know?" he asked. "Know what?" "The prophecy." He glanced at Ronan. "You didn't tell her?" Ronan's silence was answer enough. The scarred wolf turned back to Lyra. 300 years ago, during the founding of the territories, a seer made a prediction. She said when the blood moon rises over a broken bond, the forgotten flame will awaken, and that flame will either save the territories or burn them to ash. He paused. 2 nights ago, there was a blood moon. You were rejected by your bonded mate, and you manifested embers fire for the first time in 30 years. You're the prophecy girl, and Lord Kyle intends to make sure you burn nothing but yourself. The words hung in the air like smoke. Lyra tried to process them and couldn't. Prophecy. Forgotten flame. Save or destroy. It sounded like something from Kale's history books, not real life. But the scarred wolf's face was serious, and Ronan's silence suggested he'd known all along. "Is there anything else?" Ronan asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Only that Lord Kale remembers you, Alpha King. He remembers when you were just Ronan Virel, desperate heir trying to break a curse. He knows what you want from the Empress girl, and he finds it amusing that you're both going to die before you get it." Ronan moved so fast Lyra barely saw it. One moment he was standing still. The next, the scarred wolf was pinned against the wall, Ronan's hand around his throat, lightning crackling across his knuckles. "Go back to your master," Ronan said softly. "Tell him I accept his challenge. But when the sun touches the western mountains, it won't be Lyra Ashen walking through those gates. It'll be me, and I'm going to kill him slowly." He released the wolf. The 3 negotiators retreated quickly, clearly shaken despite their training. When they were gone, Ronan turned to the assembled commanders. "Everyone out. Now." They left. Even the council members, though they looked ready to protest. Only Kess remained, standing by the door like a guard. Ronan looked at Lyra. "You want to know about the prophecy?" "I want to know why you didn't mention it before." Because prophecies are manipulative garbage that people use to justify whatever they already want to do. He leaned against the parapet. Yes, there's an old prediction about Ember's fire. Yes, it matches your circumstances, but that doesn't mean anything concrete. Kyle thinks it means something. Kyle is insane. Ronan's gold eyes caught the light. He's built his entire strategy around eliminating you because some seer 3 centuries ago had a vision during a mushroom-induced hallucination. It's not rational. But you think the prophecy might be real, Lyra pressed. That's why you claimed me. Not just because I might break your curse, because I might fulfill some prediction about saving the territories. I claimed you because I was curious. His voice was flat. Everything after that is logistics. Lyra didn't believe him, but arguing seemed pointless when there was an army of corrupted wolves waiting to kill them both. So what's the plan? She asked instead. The plan is we hold the walls until Kyle gets impatient and attacks. Then we kill as many corrupted as possible before they breach the fortress. Then we evacuate non-combatants through the southern tunnels while we make a last stand. Ronan's expression was grim. It's not a good plan, but it's what we have. That's suicide. Yes, there has to be another option. There isn't. We're outnumbered 5-1. They're enhanced by dark magic, and we have maybe 4 hours to prepare. He pushed off from the wall. Unless you have a brilliant idea hiding somewhere, we're going to die defending this fortress. Lyra looked out at the corrupted army, at the darkness that surrounded them like a living thing. A Kyle Draven on his monstrous mount, waiting patiently for the sun to move. An idea was forming. Terrible. Risky. Probably suicidal, but maybe less suicidal than Ronan's plan. What if we don't wait for them to attack? She said slowly. Ronan stared at her. Explain. Kyle wants me specifically. The whole army is here because of me. If I go to him, absolutely not. And challenge him directly, one-on-one, it draws him away from the fortress, away from his army. He'll kill you. Maybe. But you said yourself dark magic is eating him from the inside. He's more dead than alive. That has to create weaknesses. Lyra turned to face Ronan fully. And I have something he doesn't. What? She held up one hand. Let the fire ignite. Silver-white flames danced across her palm, brighter than before, more controlled. Hours of training had made a difference, even if she was nowhere near mastery. The forgotten flame, she said. The thing he spent 30 years trying to extinguish. Maybe it can burn away whatever corruption is keeping him alive. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. That's the most insane thing I've heard today, and I've heard a lot of insane things. But possible. Possible and suicidal aren't mutually exclusive. He ran one hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. Even if you could get close enough to touch him, which you can't, you have no idea if Ember's fire can counter dark magic corruption. Do you have a better idea? Several. All of them involve you staying behind these walls where you're marginally safer. Safe doesn't matter if everyone dies anyway, Kess spoke up from the doorway. She's got a point. Both Ronan and Lyra turned to stare at her. You were listening? Ronan asked. Obviously, and she's right, Kyle is here for her specifically. Every hour we delay, more of his army arrives. The longer this plays out, the worse our odds get. Kess looked at Lyra. If you can kill Kyle, the corrupted lose their anchor. Most of them will probably collapse without him sustaining their magic. Or they'll go berserk and slaughter everyone in reach, Ronan countered. Also possible, but it's better odds than a siege. Ronan was looking at Lyra with an expression she couldn't quite read. Anger? Concern? Something else? If I let you do this, he said slowly, you need to understand the stakes. Kyle Draven is 300 years old and has survived more assassination attempts than I can count. He's a master combatant, even without dark magic, and you've had exactly 2 days of training. I know. You'll probably die. I know that too. Then why the... Because I'm tired of hiding. The fire in her hand flared brighter. My mother spent her whole life running from wolves like Kyle. She died trying to keep me safe. And I spent 23 years being invisible, being nothing, letting people treat me like I didn't matter. I'm done with that. If I'm going to die anyway, I'd rather die fighting. Something shifted in Ronan's face. He looked at her like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. "You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," he said finally. "Can I be both?" His laugh was short and sharp. "All right, we'll do it your way. But not alone. If you're walking out there, I'm going with you." "That defeats the purpose. I don't care. Those are my terms. We challenge Kale together, or you stay behind these walls." His gold eyes were hard. "Choose." Lyra wanted to argue, but looking at Ronan's expression, she knew it was pointless. This was as much compromise as she was going to get. "Fine," she said. "Together." The next 2 hours were a blur of preparation that felt simultaneously too fast and too slow. Ronan gathered his best fighters, not to march with them, but to hold the walls if everything went wrong. Kes coordinated the evacuation plan for non-combatants. Kale emerged from the archives with books about dark magic corruption that he insisted Lyra read, even though there wasn't time. She tried, got through maybe 3 pages before her brain refused to absorb any more information. What she learned was this: dark magic was essentially borrowed power. It enhanced the user beyond natural limits, but the price was gradual corruption of their life force. The longer someone used it, the less human they became. Eventually, they were just vessels, empty shells animated by magic that no longer remembered what it had been. Kyle had been using dark magic for over a century. He wasn't a wolf anymore. He was something else. And Lyra was going to try to burn that something else away with fire she barely understood. "Stop thinking," Ronan said. He'd found her in the training room, staring at her hands like they held answers. "You're psyching yourself out. I'm trying to understand what I'm supposed to do. You're supposed to not die. Everything else is secondary." He crossed to where she stood. "Show me your fire." She summoned it. Easier now than before, though still requiring conscious effort. The silver-white flames wrapped around her hands like gloves. "Good. Now, make it hotter." "How?" "Emotion. You know this already. Anger, fear, desperation, whatever works. Channel it into the flames." Lyra thought about the arena. About Darian's rejection. About her mother dying alone while Kyle's hunters closed in. About 23 years of being invisible. The fire turned white gold, bright enough to make Ronan step back. "Like that," he said. "Now hold it steady." She tried. The flames wavered, intensity fluctuating as her concentration slipped. "You're forcing it," Ronan observed. "Stop thinking so much. Let it be part of you, not something you're controlling." "That doesn't make sense." "Magic never does." He held up his own hand. Lightning crackled across his palm, gold-white, beautiful and terrible. "When I first manifested, I kept trying to control it, shape it, make it obey. Took years before I realized I was doing it wrong. The power isn't separate. It's an extension of who you are. So I just let it happen? More or less." The lightning dissipated. "Stop fighting yourself. You're an empress. Fire is your birthright. Claim it." Lyra looked at the flames dancing around her hands. "Stop trying to control them. Just let them be." They steadied, burned brighter, felt less like something she was doing and more like something she was. "Better," Ronan said. "Remember that feeling. You're going to need it." Outside, the sun was moving toward the western mountains. Their deadline was approaching. They gathered at the north gate, Ronan, Lyra, and 6 guards who would accompany them part way. Kes was there too, looking furious that her injury meant she couldn't come. "This is still insane," she said for the 10th time. "Noted," Ronan replied. "If you die, I'm killing you." "Looking forward to it." Kes turned to Lyra. "You know what you're doing?" "Absolutely not." "Good. Overconfidence gets people killed." She gripped Lyra's shoulder, the uninjured arm, carefully. "You manifested fire 2 days ago. You're still breathing. That's better odds than most embers got. Remember that." The gates opened. They walked out into the killing ground, 6 guards flanking them, heading toward an army of corrupted wolves who wanted Lyra dead. The corrupted didn't attack. They parted instead, creating a path that led directly to Kyle Draven. Up close, the warlord was worse than Lyra had imagined. His armor was black and organic-looking, like it had grown rather than been forged. His face was visible beneath the helmet, gaunt, scarred, with eyes that burned red. When he smiled, his teeth were too sharp. "The Empress girl," he said. His voice sounded like gravel scraping metal. Finally. Lyra stopped 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to react if he attacked. Kyle Draven, she said, surprised by how steady her voice was. Warlord, murderer, wolf who spent 30 years hiding in the wastes like a coward. The corrupted around them hissed. Kale just laughed. Bold words from a child who can barely control her fire. He dismounted from his creature. Standing, he was taller than Ronan, impossibly thin beneath the armor. Do you know how many embers I've killed? 47. Your grandmother put up quite a fight. Your mother less so. She was too busy running. The fire ignited around Lyra's hands before she consciously summoned it. There it is, Kael said, pleased. The forgotten flame. I've waited so long to see it again, to finish what I started. You're afraid of it, Lyra realized suddenly. That's why you spent 30 years making sure House Embry stayed extinct. Not because we were a threat to territorial stability, because you knew the fire could burn away your corruption. Kael's smile faded. Clever, but wrong. I hunted your family because they represented everything weak about the old order. Power bound by conscience. Strength wasted on mercy. The territories needed cleansing, and House Embrys stood in the way. So you allied with Marcus Voss and butchered them. I liberated the territories from outdated bloodlines. Kael spread his arms. Look what I've built in the wastes, an army that doesn't question, doesn't hesitate, doesn't feel pain or fear or doubt. This is the future. Power, without weakness. That's not power, Ronan said quietly. That's just death wearing armor. Kael's attention shifted. Ronan Virel, the cursed king. How many mates have you killed now? 5? 6? 4, Ronan said. But who's counting? Still trying to break it, I see. That's why you claim the girl. You think Embrys fire can sever the curse binding your bloodline. Kael's laugh was harsh. It can't. The curse is death itself. No magic burns that away. We'll see. No. Kael's eyes glowed brighter. You won't, because I'm going to kill you both, slowly. Make an example that ensures no one ever questions my authority again. The corrupted wolves closed in, forming a circle around them. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all moving with that wrong, jerky motion. Lyra's heart hammered. This was it. The moment where her terrible plan either worked or got everyone killed. She looked at Ronan. He nodded slightly. Ready. Lyra took a breath. Let the fire build. Stopped suppressing it, stopped controlling it. Just let it be what it wanted to be. Silver-white flames exploded around her entire body. Not just her hands this time. Every inch of skin ignited, turning her into a living torch that burned bright enough to make the corrupted wolves step back, hissing and covering their eyes. Kael watched with interest rather than fear. Impressive, but fire alone won't... Lyra attacked. She didn't have technique or training or any real idea what she was doing. She just ran forward and grabbed Kael's arm, the physical contact immediate and shocking. The moment her burning hand touched his corrupted armor, both magics screamed. Kael roared. The dark magic sustaining him recoiled from Ember's fire like living tissue from acid. Where Lyra's flames met his corruption, smoke poured out, thick and black and smelling like burning rot. But the contact was burning her too. Dark magic fought back, trying to corrupt her the way it had corrupted Kael. She felt it crawling up her arm, cold and invasive, trying to smother her fire. You can't win, Kael snarled, grabbing her wrist. I've had a century to master this power. You've had 2 days. He was right. The dark magic was overwhelming her fire, spreading across her skin like frost. Then Ronan was there. Lightning struck down from a clear sky, channeled through Ronan's hand directly into Kael's chest. The combined assault, fire and lightning, life magic, and elemental fury was too much even for century-old corruption. Kael's armor cracked. His scream was inhuman. The corrupted wolves surged forward. But something was happening. Lyra could feel it through the flames. The dark magic wasn't just burning away. It was breaking apart, fragmenting, losing cohesion. And without Kael sustaining it, the corrupted wolves were losing their anchor. Some collapsed immediately. Others convulsed, their enhanced muscles tearing themselves apart. The strongest fought to stay standing, But even they were weakening, corruption draining away. Impossible, Kyle gasped. His red eyes were fading to normal brown. His gaunt face was aging rapidly, a century of borrowed time coming due all at once. You're just a girl, you can't— I'm the Forgotten Flame, Lyra said. Her voice resonated with power she didn't fully understand. And you're already dead. You've been dead for years. We're just making it official. She poured everything into the fire, every memory of humiliation, every moment of being invisible, every ounce of rage at wolves like Kyle who'd murdered her family and destroyed her heritage. The flames turned pure white. Kael Draven screamed one final time. Then he turned to ash. Just like that. 300 years of dark magic, a century of corruption, an army of enhanced wolves, all of it collapsing because one untrained girl with inherited fire magic had touched him. The corrupted wolves fell like puppets with cut strings. Lyra collapsed too, her fire guttering out completely. She'd burned through every reserve she had. Her body was done. Ronan caught her before she hit the ground. You did it, he said. He sounded almost surprised. Did I kill him? Very much so. Ronan looked around at the fallen army and broke his hold on the corrupted. The ones who survive will be normal wolves again. Traumatized, probably insane, but free. Lyra tried to process that. Couldn't. Her brain was shutting down from exhaustion and magical burnout. Marcus Voss, she mumbled. Still out there. Still wants me dead. One problem at a time. Ronan lifted her easily, carrying her back toward the fortress. The guards who'd accompanied them were staring at the ash pile that used to be Kyle Draven, their expressions shocked. As they passed through the gates, Lyra heard cheering. The walls were packed with wolves who'd watched the entire confrontation. Council members, guards, servants, civilians. Everyone who'd been preparing to die was now watching the girl they'd dismissed as nobody walk back into the fortress after killing the most feared warlord in the territories. The old council member was there, his cold blue eyes wide with something that might have been respect. The severe woman was actually smiling. Even the young wolves who'd mocked her during training were applauding. Lyra wanted to say something profound, something that would match the moment. Instead, she passed out. She woke in her quarters, sunlight streaming through windows. Her entire body ached like she'd been beaten. Her hands were wrapped in bandages. Someone had changed her into clean clothes. Kes sat in a chair beside the bed, her injured arm still in a sling. You're alive, Kes observed. Surprised? Moderately. You burned through enough magical energy to kill most wolves. Your body shut down for 3 days. 3 days? Lyra sat up slowly, wincing. What happened? With Kael's army? Most of them died when the corruption left. The survivors are being processed, sorted into those who were forced into service versus those who chose it willingly. It'll take months. Kess's expression was carefully neutral. But the immediate threat is over. You killed Kael Draven. The prophecy wolves have been talking about for 3 centuries? You fulfilled it, or started to anyway. What about Marcus Voss? Gone quiet. His allies are deserting. Turns out watching a lowborn girl burn away an army of corrupted wolves makes people reconsider their political positions. Kes stood. The king wants to see you when you're ready. Lyra forced herself upright, ignoring her body's protests. I'm ready now. Ronan was in the council chamber, alone for once, staring at maps spread across the table. He looked up when she entered, something shifting in his expression. You should be resting, he said. I've rested for 3 days, apparently. Your body needs more than that after what you did. But he gestured to a chair. Sit before you fall over. She sat. The maps showed the territories, color-coded regions representing different houses and their allegiances. Most of the northern section was now unmarked. Kael's death created a power vacuum, Ronan explained. Several smaller houses are already fighting over his territory. It'll be chaos for a while. And Marcus? In hiding, probably trying to regroup. But his influence is shattered. The council is already drafting formal censure. Ronan's gold eyes held hers. You changed everything, Lyra. One fight, one desperate gamble, and the entire political landscape shifted. I didn't do it for politics. I know, you did it to survive, but the effect is the same. He paused. There's something else. The curse. Lyra's breath caught. What about it? When you touched Kael, when our magic combined, fire and lightning, I felt something break. Not the corruption, something older. His voice was careful. The curse that's killed every mate I've claimed. It's gone. The words hung in the air between them. How? Lyra asked. I don't know. Maybe the prophecy was real after all. Maybe Ember's fire can burn away more than just dark magic, or maybe... He stopped, started again. Maybe it was never about the magic. Maybe it was about finding someone strong enough to survive what comes with being bound to me. Lyra didn't know what to say to that. Ronan stood, moving to the window. You have choices now, more than before. You're not just the girl I claimed. You're the wolf who killed Kael Draven. Houses will want to ally with you. The council will listen when you speak. You could build real power. I don't want power. Then what do you want? She thought about it. About the arena and the rejection, and 3 days ago when she'd thought she was going to die fighting a corrupted warlord. I want to stop running, she said finally. I want to find out who I am when I'm not hiding or suppressing or trying to be invisible. I want... She paused. I want to see what happens next. Ronan turned from the window. His smile was small but genuine. Then stay. Help me rebuild what Kael destroyed. Learn to control that fire properly. Be the embers heir your mother couldn't be. And the bond? Lyra asked quietly. Between us. What does that become? Whatever we choose to make it. He crossed back to where she sat, offered his hand. No prophecy, no curse, no political necessity, just two wolves who survive something impossible and want to see what comes after. Lyra looked at his hand, scarred, calloused, the hand that had caught her fire and helped her kill a warlord. She took it. The spark was there again, not a bond, not fate, just possibility. Outside, the sun was setting over a capital that had survived its darkest moment. Somewhere in the territories, Marcus Voss was plotting his next move. Somewhere else, former corrupted wolves were waking up and trying to remember who they'd been before Kael twisted them. But in this room, right now, Lyra Ashen felt something she'd never felt before. Hope. Hope lasted exactly 4 days before Marcus Voss made his move. Lyra was in the training room with Kess, finally working with armor that actually fit, when the alarm bells started ringing. Different pattern this time. Not invasion, but urgent summons. Council meeting. She ran. The chamber was already packed when she arrived. All 14 council members, Ronan at the head looking like murder, and Kael shuffling in from the archives with an armful of documents. What happened? Lyra asked. The old council member, she'd learned his name was Theron, spoke first. Marcus Voss just declared himself Alpha Sovereign of the Eastern Territories. He's claiming that Ronan's protection of you invalidates his authority, that the capital has fallen to Ember's corruption, and that he's forming a new government to restore proper order. That's insane, Lyra said. That's politics. The severe woman, Mira, gestured to the maps. He's got support. 3 major houses, maybe 4. They're afraid of what you represent. An Embreeze who can burn away armies? They remember what your ancestors were capable of. Ronan's knuckles were white where he gripped the table edge. He's fracturing the territories. If we don't respond immediately, we'll have civil war. We already have civil war, Theron said quietly. The moment Marcus declared sovereignty, he made it inevitable. Lyra moved to the table, studying the maps. The eastern section was colored differently now. Marcus's claimed territory. Substantial. Maybe a third of the total landmass, and strategically positioned to cut off trade routes to the capital. What does he want? She asked. You dead, obviously. Mira's tone was matter of fact. But publicly, he's demanding a formal trial. You, charged with unauthorized use of ancient magic, conspiracy to overthrow established order, and corruption of the Alpha King. Corruption, Lyra repeated flatly. He's saying you seduced Ronan, used Empress magic to cloud his judgment, turned him against his own people. Mira's expression suggested what she thought of that theory. It's propaganda, but it's working. The houses supporting Marcus genuinely believe you're a threat. Then we show them they're wrong, Lyra said. How? Theron asked. By burning down anyone who disagrees, that rather proves Marcus's point. The comment stung because it wasn't entirely unfair. 3 days ago, she'd killed Cale Draven and destroyed his entire army. That kind of power scared people, gave Marcus exactly the ammunition he needed. Ronan straightened. We don't prove anything by committee. We end this the way wolves have always ended territorial disputes. Challenge, combat, winner takes authority. You want to fight Marcus Voss personally? Mira looked skeptical. He's not Kyle. He's a politician, not a warlord. He'll find every excuse to avoid direct combat. Then we force him. Ronan's gold eyes were hard. He wants to question my authority? Fine. I'll demonstrate it in front of every wolf in the territories. Public challenge, formal rules, witnesses from every major house. And when he refuses, Theron asked. He won't refuse. His entire claim rests on being strong enough to lead. If he backs down from a direct challenge, he loses credibility. Ronan glanced at Lyra. But there's a complication. She knew what he was going to say before he said it. Marcus won't challenge me, Ronan continued. He'll challenge you. The Empress girl who corrupted the king. If you refuse, he wins politically. If you accept and lose, you're dead, and he wins anyway. The room went silent. Lyra's mind raced. This was the trap. Marcus had spent weeks planning this. He'd waited until after Kyle's death specifically because it gave him the perfect narrative. Wild, untrained Empress magic, loose in the capital, dangerous and uncontrolled. And now he'd maneuvered things so she either fought him or proved she was too afraid. I'll accept, she said. Absolutely not, Ronan said immediately. I don't see another option. The other option is I kill Marcus Voss myself and deal with the political fallout, which gives him exactly what he wants. Proof that you're compromised, that you're making decisions based on protecting me rather than leading the territories. Lyra shook her head. No, this needs to be settled between me and Marcus, cleanly, publicly. Kess, who'd been standing silently near the door, spoke up. She's right. Marcus built this whole strategy around her being the threat. She needs to be the one to dismantle it. She's had less than a week of real training, Ronan said tightly, and she killed Cale Draven. Cale was corrupted, weakened, literally falling apart. Marcus is in his prime, fully trained and fighting with every political advantage. Ronan turned to Lyra. He'll have rules designed to handicap you. Restrictions on magic use, environmental constraints, every possible edge. Then I'll work around them. Lyra's voice was steadier than she felt. You said it yourself. I changed everything when I killed Kyle. Now I need to finish what I started. Theron cleared his throat. If we're actually considering this, we should discuss terms. Challenge combat has specific protocols. The next 2 hours dissolved into excruciating detail about formal challenge rules. Location, neutral ground, witnessed by representatives from all major houses. Weapons, combatant's choice, within reason. Magic, restricted to bloodline abilities, no external enhancement. Victory conditions, death or formal surrender. Lyra listened to wolves argue about whether her fire magic counted as bloodline ability or external enhancement and wanted to scream. But she kept quiet, let them debate, watched Ronan's carefully controlled fury as he was outvoted on point after point. Finally, Mira looked at Lyra directly. You understand what you're agreeing to. Marcus Voss has been training for combat since he could walk. He's ruthless, experienced, and motivated by genuine ideological belief that you're dangerous. This isn't like fighting corrupted wolves or facing down Kyle. This is precision violence from a wolf who knows exactly what he's doing. I understand. And you still want to proceed? Lyra thought about the arena, about Darian's rejection, about her mother dying alone to keep her safe, about every moment she'd been invisible, dismissed, treated like she didn't matter. Yes, she said, I want to proceed. The challenge was sent that afternoon. Formal document sealed and delivered by neutral courier to Marcus's claimed territory. His response came back within hours. He accepted. The combat would take place in 3 days at the old ceremonial grounds, neutral territory between the capital and Marcus's eastern holdings. Every major house would send representatives. The council would oversee, and the winner would have uncontested authority to determine the territory's future. 3 days to prepare for a fight that would decide everything. Lyra spent them training like her life depended on it, because it did. Ronan pushed her harder than before, hours in the training room practicing fire control until her hands bled, learning to summon and dismiss the flames in seconds rather than minutes. Kes drilled her on combat basics, the fundamentals she'd never learned. Footwork, balance, how to read an opponent's movements. Kale contributed by burying her in historical texts about previous challenge combats, pointing out strategies that had worked and mistakes that had been fatal. On the second day, Lyra collapsed during training, just dropped mid-exercise, her body giving out from exhaustion and magical burnout. Ronan called an immediate halt, ordered her to rest, threatened to chain her to the bed if necessary. She rested, barely. Her mind wouldn't shut off. That night, unable to sleep, she found herself back in the archives. Kale was there, of course, reading by candlelight at his usual table. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking up. "Can't stop thinking." Lyra sat across from him. "What if I lose? Then you die and Marcus wins and the territories probably descend into chaos while various houses fight over the power vacuum." Kale turned a page. "But that's true of most challenge combats. High stakes tend to make people nervous." "Not helping. I'm not trying to help. I'm trying to be realistic." He finally looked at her, his good eye sharp. "You want comfort? Talk to the king. You want truth? You came to the right place." "Fine. Truth. What are my actual chances?" Kale considered. "Against a trained combatant with 40 years of experience, normally I'd say 5%, maybe less." Lyra's stomach dropped. "But," Kale continued, "you have advantages Marcus doesn't. Fire magic he can't counter. Desperation that makes you unpredictable. And something else." "What?" "You're already dead. In Marcus's mind, in most of the council's mind, probably in your own mind somewhere. You're the low-born girl who shouldn't exist. You've been dead your whole life. That's freedom, in a way. You can take risks. Marcus can't. Because I have nothing to lose. Because you've already lost everything, multiple times, and you're still here." Kale's smile was slight. "That terrifies people like Marcus. He spent his whole life accumulating power, building authority, protecting what he has. You? You started with nothing. You're comfortable there. He isn't." Lyra had never thought about it that way. She returned to her quarters and somehow managed to sleep. When she woke, it was the third day. Challenge day. The morning passed in a blur. Marta brought food Lyra couldn't eat. Kes helped her into armor. Proper armor this time, fitted specifically for her. Light enough to allow movement, but reinforced at vital points. Black and silver, colors she hadn't chosen, but somehow felt right. Ronan appeared as she was checking the fit. He looked at her for a long moment without speaking. "What?" Lyra asked. "You look like an empress." His voice was quiet, like the portraits in the old wing. "Your ancestors would be proud." "My ancestors are dead because they trusted their power to protect them." "Your ancestors died because they were outnumbered 50-1 by wolves who feared them." Ronan moved closer. "You're not making their mistakes. You're making entirely new ones." Despite everything, Lyra laughed. "Also not helping. I'm not trying to help. I'm trying to—" He stopped, started again. "If you die today, I'm going to burn Marcus's entire territory to ash, just so we're clear on that." "Noted. And if you survive, we're having a conversation about proper tactical planning before you make any more dramatic gestures." "Looking forward to it." They stood there, the space between them charged with everything unspoken. Ronan reached out, almost hesitant, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Don't die," he said simply. "I'll try." The ceremonial grounds were exactly as old as they looked. Ancient stone amphitheater carved into a hillside, weathered by centuries but still structurally sound. Thousands of wolves had gathered, filling the tiered seating, representatives from every major house wearing their colors and insignia. Lyra stood at the eastern entrance, Kes and Ronan flanking her, and tried not to throw up. Across the arena floor, Marcus Voss emerged from the western entrance. He looked different than she remembered. Older, harder, dressed in ceremonial combat armor that probably cost more than Lyra had earned in her entire life. His face was set in an expression of righteous conviction, a wolf doing unpleasant but necessary work. The crowd murmured. Money was changing hands, betting on the outcome, apparently. Theron descended into the arena center, his voice magically amplified to reach every corner. We gather to witness formal challenge combat. Marcus Voss, Alpha of the Eastern Territories, challenges Lyra Embrys Ashen, heir of House Embrys, ward of the Alpha King. Lyra noticed he'd added the Embrys name without asking her permission. Political move, probably. Acknowledging her bloodline publicly. Terms have been agreed, Theron continued. Combat to death or surrender. Bloodline magic permitted. No external enhancement. Are the combatants prepared? Prepared? Marcus called out. Lyra's throat was dry. She forced herself to speak. Prepared. Then by the old laws and the witness of the assembled houses, let combat begin. Theron retreated quickly. Marcus and Lyra moved toward the center of the arena, circling each other slowly. The stone floor was worn smooth, offering no obstacles or advantages. You should have run when you had the chance, Marcus said conversationally. Gone back to washing clothes and hiding. You might have lived a long, quiet life. I'm tired of quiet, Lyra said. Then you'll die loud. Marcus moved without warning. He was fast. Faster than she'd expected. One moment he was 10 feet away. The next he was inside her guard, a blade appearing in his hand seemingly from nowhere. Lyra threw herself backward, the knife missing her throat by inches. The crowd roared. Marcus didn't pursue, just watched her regain balance, his expression analytical. You're untrained, predictable. This won't take long. Lyra summoned fire. The silver-white flames wrapped around her hands, bright in the afternoon sun. There it is, Marcus said. The magic that convinced my son you were worth claiming. Pity it won't save you. He attacked again. Different angle this time, coming in low and fast. Lyra tried to counter with fire, but Marcus twisted away from the flames with practiced ease, his blade scoring a shallow cut across her arm. First blood. The crowd's noise intensified. You're hesitating, Marcus observed, circling again. Afraid of killing me? That's a fatal weakness in combat. He was right. Lyra had killed Kael, but that had been different. Corrupted magic, desperate circumstances. Ronin's help. This was controlled, formal, intentional violence. Her body was balking at it. Marcus saw the hesitation and exploited it. 3 rapid strikes, each one drawing blood, none of them individually serious but accumulating into real damage. Lyra's armor caught the worst of it, but pain was clarifying. She needed to change tactics. When Marcus came in for another strike, Lyra didn't dodge. She stepped into the attack, accepting a shallow cut to her shoulder in exchange for close contact. Her burning hand grabbed his wrist before he could pull back. The effect was immediate. Marcus screamed, his skin blistering where she touched him. But he didn't drop the knife. Instead, he headbutted her, direct strike to her nose that sent blood streaming and stars exploding across her vision. Lyra stumbled back, fire guttering out from the shock. Marcus pressed the advantage. A series of strikes that Lyra barely blocked, her training with Kess barely adequate to keep her alive. Every movement hurt. Her nose was probably broken. Her shoulder was bleeding steadily. She was losing. The realization was oddly calming. She was going to die here, in this arena, in front of thousands of wolves. Prove Marcus right. Prove everyone right who'd ever said she was weak, unworthy, nothing, or... Lyra stopped retreating, planted her feet. Let Marcus come to her. When he struck, she didn't try to block. She let the blade sink into her side, missing vital organs by inches, but deep enough to hurt, and grabbed him with both hands. Fire exploded, not controlled, not shaped, just pure, desperate fury channeled through physical contact. Silver-white flames that consumed everything they touched. Marcus tried to pull away. Couldn't. Lyra held on like drowning, pouring every ounce of power into burning him. His armor caught fire. His hair ignited. His skin blistered and charred. But he didn't surrender. Instead, Marcus dropped his blade and wrapped both hands around Lyra's throat. Started squeezing. They stood there locked together, fire and choking in desperate violence. Lyra couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just held on and burned and prayed she'd killed him before he killed her. Her vision was going dark. The flames were dimming. Marcus's face was a mass of burns, but his hands were still crushing her throat. In the stands, she could hear Ronin shouting something, couldn't make out the words. Everything was fading. Then, crack. Something in Marcus broke. Not physically. Something deeper. The fire found whatever core of strength had kept him fighting through the pain and burned it away. His hands loosened. His eyes went unfocused. He collapsed. Lyra collapsed too, gasping for air, her throat on fire, the wound in her side bleeding freely. She rolled onto her back, staring up at the sky, wondering if she'd won or if they'd both lost. Theron's voice cut through the noise. "Marcus Voss is down. Does he surrender?" Silence. Marcus was still breathing, but barely. His burns were catastrophic. Even with immediate healing, he'd be scarred for life. "Marcus Voss," Theron called again. "Do you surrender?" A long pause. Then, barely audible. "Yes." The crowd erupted. Lyra tried to sit up and failed. Her body was done. She'd burned through every reserve again, nearly gotten strangled, and was bleeding from at least 3 separate wounds. But she'd won. Ronan was suddenly there, kneeling beside her, his hands checking her injuries with surprising gentleness. "You're an idiot," he said. "I won. You nearly died. But I won." Lyra coughed. It hurt. Everything hurt. Marcus surrendered. It means you're the most terrifying wolf in the territories, and everyone here just watched you prove it. Ronan's gold eyes were intense. It also means you need medical attention immediately. He lifted her carefully. The movement jostled her wounded side, and Lyra hissed in pain. The crowd was on its feet. Not just cheering, something else. Respect, maybe. Or fear. Possibly both. As Ronan carried her toward the exit, Lyra caught sight of Marcus. He was being tended by his own people, his face a ruin of burns, his expression broken. "Will he live?" she asked quietly. "Probably. But he'll never lead again. You destroyed his authority along with his face." Ronan's jaw was tight. "The Eastern Territories are going to fracture. Multiple houses claiming control. It'll be chaos. Then we'll deal with it." Lyra closed her eyes against the pain. Together. Recovery took 2 weeks. The wound in her side had been deeper than initially thought. Infection set in despite the healer's best efforts. Lyra spent days delirious with fever, half convinced she was back in the arena still fighting Marcus. When the fever finally broke, Ronan was sitting beside her bed. "You're awake," he said. "Apparently." Her voice was hoarse. "How long?" 14 days. You've been unconscious for most of it." He poured water from a pitcher, helped her drink. "The council wants to speak with you. Several houses want to negotiate alliances. Marcus's former territory is in chaos. And someone started a rumor that you're actually a goddess reborn." "What?" "Politics." Ronan's smile was slight. "You defeated the most powerful challenger in living memory. People are trying to make sense of it through mythology." Lyra processed that. "What actually happened after the challenge?" "Marcus survived. Barely. He's retreated to what's left of his holdings, publicly humiliated and politically finished. Most of his allies have withdrawn support. 3 major houses have formally recognized you as heir of House Embrus." Ronan paused. "Darian Voss requested an audience." Lyra's breath caught. "What?" 2 days ago. I told him you weren't receiving visitors, but the request stands if you want to see him." "Did she?" Lyra wasn't sure. Part of her wanted to refuse out of spite. Another part was curious what he could possibly have to say. "Send him in," she said finally. Ronan looked like he wanted to object. Instead, he nodded and left. Darian appeared 20 minutes later, escorted by 2 guards who looked ready to kill him at the slightest provocation. He was thinner than Lyra remembered, his face drawn, dark circles under his eyes. He stopped at the foot of her bed. The guard stayed by the door. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You look terrible," Darian said finally. "You look worse." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Fair." He glanced at the guards, then back at Lyra. "I came to apologize. For what happened in the arena. For the rejection. For everything." "Why now?" "Because you almost died fighting my father. Because you won anyway. Because I spent the last month realizing exactly how badly I misjudged you." Darian's voice was quiet. "I thought you were weak. I thought the bond was a mistake. I thought rejecting you was the strong choice. It was cruel. It was both." He looked away. My father spent years teaching me that strength meant power, authority, control. That showing mercy or kindness was weakness. I believed him. And when the bond snapped into place between us, all I could see was how it would weaken me politically. So you humiliated me instead? Yes. No excuses, no justification, just acknowledgement. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I was wrong about you, about everything. Lyra studied him. The boy, man, really, who'd stood in the arena and called her unworthy, who'd led a strike force to kill her, who'd run when her fire manifested. Your father sent you to kill me, she said. I know. You would have done it. Probably. Darian met her eyes. I'm not proud of that, but I won't lie about it either. Honesty, at least, that was something. What do you want, Darian? Lyra asked. Actual answer. Not apologies or explanations. What are you hoping to get from this conversation? He was quiet for a long moment. Permission to rebuild. My father destroyed our house's reputation. Our allies have abandoned us. We're politically isolated and economically collapsing. If you publicly denounce me, House Voss ends. If you show mercy, even slight mercy, we might survive. So you're asking me to save you? I'm asking you not to finish what you started when you defeated my father. Darian's voice was steady. I know it's a lot to ask, but I'm asking anyway. Lyra looked at the ceiling, thought about the arena, the rejection, the weeks of humiliation that had followed. Part of her wanted to tell Darian to suffer, to experience what she'd experienced, to understand what it felt like to be discarded. But another part remembered what Cale had said, about being comfortable with nothing, about freedom that came from having already lost everything. I won't publicly denounce you, she said finally, but I won't endorse you either. House Voss survives or falls on its own merit. Darian nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair, probably. He started to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I watched you fight my father, watched you nearly die rather than surrender. You're not weak, Lyra. You never were. I was just too blind to see it. After he left, Lyra lay in bed and tried to process the conversation. No closure, exactly, but maybe the beginning of something else, not forgiveness. Maybe acceptance. The door opened again. Ronan this time. How did it go? He asked. Strange, awkward, necessary, probably. Lyra shifted position, wincing. He apologized. Do you believe him? I think he believes himself. Whether that matters is a different question. She looked at Ronan. What happens now? With the territories? Reorganization. Several houses want to form a new council structure, reduce concentration of power. Others want to reinforce traditional hierarchies. It'll be years before everything settles. Ronan sat in the chair beside her bed. But there's consensus on one thing. What? You. Every major house has acknowledged you as legitimate Empress heir. They're requesting you take a formal seat on the council, help shape whatever comes next. Lyra had known this was coming, but hearing it still felt surreal. I don't know anything about politics. You killed two of the most dangerous wolves in the territories through sheer stubborn refusal to die. That's better qualification than most council members have. Ronan's expression was serious, but it's your choice. You could refuse, build a quiet life somewhere. No one would blame you. Could she? Lyra tried to imagine it, returning to obscurity, hiding her fire, being invisible again. The thought made her physically ill. I'll do it, she said. Take the council seat, help rebuild, whatever needs doing. Ronan smiled. Thought you might say that. 3 months later, Lyra stood in the same arena where she'd been rejected. But everything was different now. The blood moon had given way to normal lunar cycles. The stone tiers were packed again, but this time wolves had come to witness something else. Not humiliation, not combat. Coronation. Ronan stood at the center of the arena in formal regalia, the weight of 3 centuries of kingship visible in his bearing. Beside him, the council, expanded now, including representatives from houses that had been politically marginalized for decades. And at his other side, Wearing black and silver armor inscribed with Embrys symbols stood Lyra. The ceremony was ancient, formal, laden with ritual Lyra had spent weeks learning. Words in the old language, oaths that bound her to the territories and the territories to her, recognition of her bloodline, her authority, her right to stand as equal partner in leadership. When it came time for the final oath, the one that would formalize her position, Theron stepped forward. "Lyra Embrys Ashen," he said, his voice carrying across the arena. "Do you swear to protect the territories, defend the weak, uphold justice, and lead with wisdom and strength?" She met his eyes. "I swear." "Do you accept the mantle of House Embra, the legacy of flame, and the responsibility that comes with ancient power?" "I accept." "Then by the authority of the assembled houses, the council, and the Alpha King himself," Theron gestured to Ronan, "rise, Lyra Embrys, Queen of the Northern Territories, Firekeeper, and rightful heir." The crowd erupted, not laughter this time, not mockery. Genuine respect, genuine acknowledgement, genuine understanding that the girl they'd dismissed had become something they couldn't ignore. Ronan offered his hand. Lyra took it, that familiar spark passing between them. "How does it feel?" he asked quietly. "Terrifying. Surreal. Right, somehow." "Good answer." He turned to address the crowd, his voice amplified. "Before you stands proof that power isn't inherited. It's forged." Lyra Embrys came from nothing, was rejected, dismissed, nearly killed by wolves who thought they knew her value. She proved them wrong through fire and courage, an absolute refusal to accept the limitations others placed on her. He looked at Lyra. "I claimed her under a blood moon when no one else would. Best decision I ever made." The crowd roared approval. Lyra scanned the tears, saw Kess grinning fiercely, saw Marta dabbing at her eyes, saw council members who'd once questioned her existence now applauding her coronation, saw representatives from dozens of houses all witnessing this moment, and in the back, barely visible, she saw Darian. He met her eyes briefly, nodded once, acknowledgement maybe or respect, then slipped away. The ceremony continued, more oaths, more formalities. The presentation of Embrys regalia that had been hidden for 30 years, brought out of storage specifically for this moment. When it finally ended, when Lyra was officially queen and the crowd had dispersed to celebrate, she found herself back in her quarters, larger now, befitting her new station, but still fundamentally the same room where she'd first arrived months ago. Ronan appeared in the doorway. Tired? Exhausted, but also, she searched for words. "I keep expecting someone to tell me it's a mistake, that I'm still just the girl who did laundry." "You are that girl. You're also a queen. Both things can be true." He crossed to where she stood by the window. "The territories are going to be different now. We're rebuilding everything, power structures, alliances, the fundamental understanding of who deserves authority. It's going to be messy." "I know. And there will be wolves who resent you, who see you as proof that their old certainties were wrong. Some of them will be dangerous." "I know that too." Ronan was quiet for a moment. "The curse is broken. I felt it die when you killed Kael, which means, if we wanted, we could formalize our bond. Make it official." Lyra's breath caught. "Is that what you want?" "I want to find out what happens when two wolves who've both spent their lives fighting to survive actually get to live instead." His gold eyes were intense. No prophecy, no political necessity, just choice. She thought about it, about the arena and the rejection and the journey that had brought her here, about fire and lightning and the strange alchemy that happened when they combined. "Yes," she said simply. His smile was rare and genuine. "Good. But later, after you've rested, after we've dealt with the immediate political chaos, after we've earned it," Lyra finished. "Exactly." They stood together at the window, looking out at the capital. The same city that had once seemed impossibly foreign now felt almost like home. Below, wolves celebrated, fires burning in the streets, controlled fires, celebratory fires, nothing like the chaos of Kael's attack. "I never thanked you," Lyra said quietly, "for claiming me that night, for seeing something in me when everyone else saw nothing." "Don't." Ronan's voice was rough. You earned everything that followed. I just got you through the door. You did the rest. We did the rest? Fair enough. The moon rose over the capital, not blood red this time, just normal silver light. The same moon that had watched Lyra's humiliation now watched her coronation. Witness to transformation that seemed impossible, but it happened anyway. Somewhere in the territories, wolves were adjusting to new reality. Marcus Voss, scarred and broken, trying to rebuild what he'd destroyed. Darian, learning to lead without his father's shadow. Houses that had opposed Lyra now negotiating for her favor. The eastern territories slowly stabilizing under new leadership. And in the fortress, in a room that still didn't quite feel like hers, Lyra Empress Ashen, once invisible, once rejected, once nothing, stood beside the Alpha King and allowed herself something she'd never permitted before. Pride. Not in power or position or the fears she could inspire. Pride in having survived. In having refused to break when everything conspired to break her. In having taken fire that was meant to destroy her and turned it into the force that reshaped everything. "What are you thinking?" Ronan asked. Lyra looked at her hands. They weren't burning now, but she could feel the fire waiting beneath her skin. Always there. Always ready. No longer suppressed. "I'm thinking about my mother," she said. "About how she spent her life hiding to keep me safe. How she never got to see what I became. She'd be proud. Maybe. Or horrified. I'm not sure which." Lyra smiled slightly. "But I think she'd understand that sometimes survival isn't about hiding. Sometimes it's about burning bright enough that no one can ignore you anymore." Below, the celebration continued. Above, the moon watched. And in the space between two wolves who'd both been broken in different ways, stood together and planned for a future neither of them had thought possible. The girl they'd mocked had become the queen. The curse was broken. The territories were reborn. And in an arena where she'd once been humiliated, Lyra Empress had claimed something more powerful than any title or position or magical ability. She'd claimed herself. The fire was hers now. The future was hers. And anyone who'd ever doubted her, ever rejected her, ever called her weak, ever assumed she'd be nothing, was about to learn exactly what happened when you underestimated a wolf who'd already survived the impossible. She was done hiding, done suppressing, done being invisible. The forgotten flame had awakened, and the territories would never be the same.